102.3 KJLH Compton, Los Angeles.
So I thought we'd start with something easy. I'm going to throw topics at you guys. We're going to talk about some of these issues and then, of course, see what you think. Now, did you hear about this guy? You know Pharma Bro. Pharma Bro is this guy, Martin Shkreli, who gets in trouble. Well, he got in trouble for price gouging on, pharmaceutical products that people need. Yesterday, he went to jail because he went on social media saying he would pay $5,000 for anyone who can get a hair off the head of Hillary Clinton. I don't know if he was trying to do DNA testing. I'm not sure what he was trying to do, but he was already in trouble for just being him. He's been on trial for his, and he got off on most of the charges for the price gouging situation. Is this, he says he's just trying to be funny. Is this, an acceptable internet prank, or is this like assault, which is basically what the police are saying, is that he's advocating assault? What do you think?
I just thought it was an excuse to get him into jail. From the anyone that's awaiting sentencing, I tend to take Kendrick's advice and just be humble, right? And so,
sit down.
right, exactly. And so, if you want to come up and make a Facebook post like that, you're gonna find yourself in some hot water, and the judge stuck it to him.
Jaclyn, I mean, as an actress, and a high-profile person, did this resonate differently for you? Like, how would you feel if someone put out a bounty on one of your hairs?
Well, there's only a few left, so they're worth a lot now.
Right.
I feel he's responsible. It's like you see video games or movies and kids think that they're telling the truth. You should do this, you should be like this, and then the kid does something dangerous. The people who created that movie or that video game have become liable. So you are liable. If somebody gets hurt in a hotel, the hotel is liable for the injury. So, yeah, he's liable. He said it. It wasn't a prank. He's just trying to get attention, just like with the Wu-Tang Clan album that he's trying to sell now. Part of the proceeds going to charity or medical research, which is, to me, a slap in the face, personally.
No, I have to agree with you. I thought it was in bad taste and poor taste, and he's not a comedian to do something like that. I could expect this something maybe from Bill Maher as a joke, but it wasn't. And I think a lot of people are doing stuff for extra attention, especially with social media. I really think it was a dumb move, but hey, you do the crime, you pay the time.
He showed who he is. I mean, this is a guy that he was going to be sentenced for price gouging. I mean, we're talking about what, 5,000 or 5,000% markup on life-saving drugs, and so that type of individual is going to act, in all sorts of ways. And so when you see him put the Facebook post, and it's in his circles, I'm sure it was humorous, but that's the type of person he is. And so what we're saying is that no, that behavior isn't right, and you're going to pay the bill for that.
Okay, super hot topic right now, Jemele Hill. She's an ESPN commentator, and she had gone on Twitter and made her thoughts plain about President Trump and saying that he is a white supremacist, saying he would not be in office unless if it was for white supremacists. She has been censured disciplined, I guess, by ESPN. And this is creating a controversy, I think, not just with the public. And Nautica de la Cruz, you are on the air every day. And sometimes I feel like when we're on the air, it's almost like we walk a tightrope every day.
Yes, it is, and I'm glad that you make that comment. First of all, I believe in freedom of expression, but I also believe with social media, what I do, for example, I do middays here from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. What I do at 1:05, that's my business. You see what I mean? And if I want to vent or say something political on my Twitter, on my Facebook, or my Instagram, that's my business. That's my form of expression in a way. Now, the fact that she is a public figure and the fact that she is, she works for ESPN, just like as we work for Stevie Wonder. You always I always look at it, okay, who do I work for? Who am I representing at the same time? And I want to look good, and I want my company to look good. And I want my paycheck on the 15th and the 30th.
That's always good. Yeah.
That's always great. Love don't pay the mortgage. So at the same time, I understand, especially with everything, no one really likes the president of the United States, and everyone has their own opinions. But
he does have his followers.
Yes, he does. And people who love him and hate him still follow and want to read what's going on. Yeah. But I think that she should do a formal apology. And when someone honestly apologizes, accept it and let's move on, because there are other bigger issues in this world.
Ed Saunders, you've advised many lawmakers. Politicians have gotten in trouble quite a bit on Twitter, and other social media. I think Anthony Weiner, for example. What would you advise? I mean, do we express our opinions or not? And when is it appropriate for a person to be fired versus punished versus, let's pretend it never happened?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a new era, right? So, I mean, you've got this new era where social media brand marketing is combining both the company and the individual. I mean, when you look at Jamel, much of her day is spent on Twitter, and much of that is, you could say, is in terms of organizing her brand and pushing her brand out. But her brand is also ESPN's as well. And to your point, Nautica, I mean, you end up with this marriage of individual and company, and that plays out when the company tries to distance itself from particular issues. And you can walk down the line. I mean, there's so many different issues where this comes up. But I also think you find folks that are now trying to be as provocative as can be, because it's really about how many clicks, how many eyeballs are looking at particular posts. And so you've got to stay relevant in that regard. I don't think Jamel was being provocative, but, I love her show. I think she speaks truth to power, and I don't have a problem with what she said, but I can understand how ESPN would. I mean, ESPN.
But yet they don't have problems with what Stephen Hill said. He can say anything. And apparently it's not a problem. He never gets slapped on the hand. So many people think it's because he disrespects the African American community rather than the president or white supremacists.
Sure.
So is there a double standard about when it's okay to be political or provocative on
Sure.
Twitter?
I don't think there's a clear line. I mean, I think each
tweet and see what happens.
It's what kind of fire they're feeling. I mean, Kurt Schilling, was sort of in that same boat when he made, I guess a similar post about, sort of transgender folks. And so, however the issue comes, the problem with this one is it was somehow it got on the conversation piece at the White House press briefing, and, what she says, is important, to sports folks. But why is Huckabee Sanders talking about it?
Yeah, when the White House says you can be fired, that's a problem.
Right.
Yeah. Back to how we stay relevant. I mean, I understand that companies are now deciding who they hire based on followers. Mm-hmm. Certainly in the entertainment business, as an actor, as a commentator yourself, Jaclyn, sometimes people are going to look, well, how many Twitter followers does she have? Not sometimes, all the time. How many follow her on Instagram? So does that mean this is now part of your job and subject to the rules of your job, or does it mean anything goes? Because you've got to get people, however you can get them on board.
I don't think anything goes. You are a public figure, and I partially disagree with what you said, because after she clocks out, she works for ESPN. That is who employs her, and she represents the company, just like journalists, even in the past. You represent ABC, CBS, NBC. So those journalists, you can't voice your opinions on a specific matter that you're reporting the news on. ESPN is news for sports. You can't voice your opinions, because then you represent your company, and it's as if that company has those opinions. So I believe in freedom of speech. I applaud her for what she said, but I disagree with doing it, because Twitter, Facebook, all of these Instagrams, this is your branding now. Social media is marketing. So she's marketing, as you said, her brand. Her brand is ESPN, and she's a sports reporter. So therefore, she should reel it in a little bit with the political talk. There's enough people saying exactly what she said.
There is enough people. I mean, like I said earlier, and you said it too, freedom of expressions, freedom of speech.
But what about this, Nautica?
Yeah.
And also, Jaclyn and Ed, okay, let's say we can tweet whatever we want.
Right.
Or Instagram whatever we want. Oh, no, let's go the other way. We have to be accountable to our work in every single tweet, in every single Instagram post. Where do we draw the line? Like, does that mean we can only have sex the way our company wants us to have sex? We can only eat? Like, where do we draw the line between our private selves and our public selves? To me, how much do they control?
To me, it's, hey, if I'm not on the clock, then you shouldn't be digging in my stuff. That's my own personal stuff.
But you don't have to dig for Twitter, right? So let's say it's not social media. If you work for a company and you clocked out, is it okay for you to run naked down La Brea?
If I want to, yes.
I want to see that.
But then they can fire you.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of people want to see that.
But that's freedom of expression. I just feel like being, free today. But and I get
also
your
free
point.
to get fired. Let's look at Dr. Laura. She said the N-word 12 times on the radio. She has freedom of speech. We all do, but we also have freedom to deal with the consequences of our speech. Jaclyn, you look like you wanted to jump in there.
Well, you also have to. I'm sorry, Jaclyn, I don't mean to cut you off, but you also have to. If you are a mature adult, you're going to know what your consequences are going to be. If you're going to throw a Twitter like this, a tweet about the president like this, you're going to know somehow that you're going to get some heat.
Maybe, heat, but
get fired too. You could get fired too.
Yeah,
there aren't mature adults now in prominent positions, so we're trying to adjust to these circumstances, and so she did what she did. But like Billy Bush, he was fired for a video from how long ago with Donald Trump from the bus?
Like 4 years ago.
Yeah, so certain people are held accountable because they represent, what is that, NBC?
Yes,
I think. But other people can say what they want.
Yeah, but he was encouraging assault. I mean, that could be considered accessory to a crime. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. But you have to...
he didn't say go assault her, but, if
I don't think he should have been fired.
If someone's going, hey, I think I should go murder someone, and I'm like, but does that make me an accessory? Maybe, instead of going, maybe you should get some counseling.
But he didn't know that that part was being recorded. So in this day and age, anybody can hear anything. We're always watching.
Yeah. But just because it's being recorded or not being recorded doesn't change the fact that it's evidence. If it's a crime, whether it's being recorded.
I just trust no one. Nobody.
No.
But I was going to say, I think Jamel should have spoken out. I don't have a problem with her doing it at all. I think the decision she's got to make, and what ESPN always has to make, is sort of the business decision, right? If advertisers start bolting ESPN behind her comments, then she's got an issue. But from what she said, there's a very strong portion of the country that agrees with what she said. Right. And, I don't think anyone's bolting ESPN in terms of advertising, and if they are, there's a whole backlash to be had against companies like that. I think you'd see the opposite. I think ESPN is also cognizant of its base, of its sports base. We're in fall. ESPN carries a college football contract with the SEC. And so, a lot of their programming is geared towards Southerners. And, that's where Trump's base was. So,
Monday Night Football crowd, right?
Right. And, to that point, they've got, they brought back Hank Williams for Monday Night Football.
Mm-hmm. Which is amazing.
Yeah.
But not amazing.
But,
not sorry.
Yeah, so, their hands aren't clean in this either. So,
it's the new apology.
Right.
Yeah, but we all must see the irony in our president, who seems to tweet without a filter, going after a sportscaster who does not have the bully pulpit of the White House and saying this is a fireable offense. One has to wonder, how long would you be in the White House if offensive tweets are a fireable offense? And should the American people be firing the president because he tweets indiscriminately, even at the risk of nuclear warfare? So once again, where do we draw the line? The president doesn't clock out. I don't know if Nautica de la Cruz ever clocks out. I don't know if Jamil Hill ever clocks out. I know every time I get on this microphone, I'm like, maybe today's the day I say the wrong thing. That's me every day. Not the usual wrong thing, the really wrong thing, and then, next day it's front page, Tommy Lauren. Let's go to Renee from Inglewood. Good morning, Renee. You're on with Nautica de la Cruz, Jaclyn Bogart, and Ed Saunders. Welcome. Renee, are you with me?
Yes, I am.
You have the mic. Go ahead, please.
Thank you for being there. I'm wondering if you guys are aware of whether or not this is a real story or not. The other day, I saw on Yahoo News a story about a New Hampshire biracial boy. This is an 8-year-old boy who was playing with some of his friends, and a number of this group were Caucasian teenagers, and they actually placed the boy up on a picnic table, placed a noose around his neck, got him up on a picnic table, and then kicked the table down.
Yes, that's a true story. We talked about it on yesterday on the show. It's a horrible story, and the mom is speaking out. The police are investigating. So, yeah, it's a true story. And I'm not sure, I actually put this up on Facebook the other day because I feel like every time these kinds of stories come out, the initial instinct is to react, to become less trusting, to become angry, and to remember what's going on in Washington, to remember what's going on with these Nazis and white supremacists marching, and become more of an island. And I really feel like we have to fight that instinct because that's allowing fear to control us and say, okay, how do I reach out? How do I recognize and affirm the fact that we are one race that's human and that we are actually moving in the right direction? As Martin Luther King Jr. said, the arc of history bends toward justice, which means even if we have day-to-day horror, the big picture is justice. But sometimes that's not easy. Renee, is that why you ask? Why are you asking? What are you hoping we can maybe contribute to this conversation?
I asked so that you guys could possibly lend some assistance to persons like me. I have a 12-year-old child that goes to a private school. She has friends of all races. Yeah. And I speak with her about looking at the person to judge whether or not they're a quality friend.
Yeah. And that's still an issue, right? Nautica, you're a mom.
Yes.
And in these days of DACA, right? I mean, and your daughter is, at least half Latina.
Yes, she is. Well, she's 13, and I understand what Renee was saying. We are living in a world where it's fearful even to be a parent. I have this thing that I'll interview the parents before I interview the kid to see if we could be friends, and I want to do a background check. But it's scary. It really is. And within politics and sex trafficking, I fear for my daughter every single day, but I also leave the house giving her a blessing, and I hope that she'll be protected and guided right, and pray that she will always make good decisions and that her friends are good friends.
See, I refuse to be ruled by fear as a mom, although it's hard because I have a 12-year-old African-American boy with a mouth like his mother. So, so I have to, I definitely pray, but I also don't want to teach him fear. I say, yes, you can talk to strangers. What a hypocrite would I be telling you not to talk to strangers when I do it for a living? Right. You can't get a job if you don't talk to strangers. I teach him that we're all one race, we're human. I teach him one love. But at the same time, and I tell him, if the cops pull you over, don't talk except for what they tell you and say, sir, comply. After that, we'll get you lawyered up. Don't worry about it. We're going to get you straight. People. Yes, exactly. We know people. You don't have to, don't be the lawyer, be the judge. I also teach him, that you have to be mindful and trust your instincts with any person. Whether it's another African-American friend, because he's Latino and African-American. Ed, you're also a dad.
I've got a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and we were just having a conversation last week about, when do you start teaching your kids about, American history? Certainly from an African-American perspective, how do I teach my children what slavery was and how far do I go with truth? 9 years old, third grade, do I really have an upfront conversation about it? Our family, we've chosen to speak to him about it.
Okay.
He also goes to a school where there's a great deal of diversity. And he's made friends from all different races. He's a kid. They all play and they're as innocent as they can be. And you want to protect that innocence as long as you can. you start to see this story, and you just I don't know the ins and outs and the particulars of the story, but when does that innocence get shattered?
Well,
kids
when
will
you
always
read
sort
it,
of do
you're going to
something
freak
right.
out because you see the kid's neck, and you can tell where the rope was. I mean, it's cut deep into his neck.
Right.
And they say biracial. I don't believe in that. I think he might be multi-ethnic, multicultural. I believe there's one race, and that's human. But clearly, he looks black. My son is also light-skinned, as they say. And I tell him, don't believe the hype. They know you're black.
Right.
There's no question. I don't care if people say, I'm Indian, Romanian, and, 2 drops of black. I don't care. They know you're black. And the KKK is not checking your pedigree. All they need is one nappy hair and you're dead.
And you can't be, you also can't be naive about it. I mean,
Yeah,
certainly
exactly.
Where we're talking about
Yeah,
kids,
exactly.
you send kids to school, teachers, administrators at school all have, preconceived notions of children. I mean, we've dealt with this at LAUSD, right? With sort of the discipline issue when you start looking at
the
suspensions.
disparity in suspensions where our children are much more likely to be suspended or expelled.
And it's largely driven by just snap reaction to race.
Perception.
One child does something.
A lot of it is subconscious prejudice, subconscious bias.
Exactly. And so, that's the world we live in. And, it's tough. It's tough as a parent. You certainly want to see your child grow up with, all of the interactions that they can. And, I don't hold my children back from their interactions, but, at some point, the innocence is going to be shattered.
Eventually.
At some point, you're going to have to confront, what they're learning in their history books. And that's kind of where the story really happens. What we have to teach our children about history versus what they would have learned absent the parents, and that's what other children are learning. And they actually don't get a full understanding of what slavery was or what this country, how it treats African Americans. And so, they're going to run into that conflict down the line as well.
Yeah, I think it's eyes open, but also, remembering that we have to reinforce brotherhood, sisterhood, love. Otherwise, in this particular era, that can just be a problem. Go ahead.
Well, here's what terrifies me. I'm not a mom yet. My eggs are in the freezer. It will happen. Don't worry, guys. B, I'm a Jew from Georgia. All right. I grew up there. I grew up in Atlanta. Very diverse. Didn't really experience a lot of hatred in the city. But what terrifies me is that New Hampshire, you think of this in middle America. Mm-hmm. Children are taught. They're not born this way. They're taught to hate. I mean, I'm on the radio right now, but you can't see. I don't look that Jewish at the moment. People don't know from the color of my skin or the color of my hair or the shape of my nose what ethnicity I am. But the fact that this happened in New Hampshire, you feel that, a little bit more aware of everyone. And it scares me that this day and age history is repeating itself. And to the degree that it's repeating itself, it's a scary thing.
Pushing up against the clock here. But, in this conversation about, how do we deal with hate? How do we deal with discrimination, bigotry in the context of children? This woman, Paula Garcia, was targeted at her school by other students who said, oh, she's a DACA recipient. She shouldn't be here. Let's get rid of her. And the university where she was going said, well, Transylvania University says this is okay. This is freedom of speech. If other students want to harass her and advocate harassing her so she has to leave the school, this is protected under freedom of speech. As a Latina, as a mom, Nautica de la Cruz, how do you respond to this?
Well, first of all, this makes me upset because the fact that she is here with a visa and a permit to go to school is hard to come by regardless, especially with everything that's going on. But the fact that she's getting bullied and that they're picking on her and that the university is okay with that, that's not okay with me. Because if this was my daughter, I would be out there rallying and very, very upset and probably, calling someone to march with me because this to me is unacceptable. Children nowadays, especially young adults, they want to get an education. A lot of people come to this country. I know my mom came to this country from Colombia to Puerto Rico to New York to improve her life, to get an education. And the fact that they're stopping her from doing this and it just it appalls me. It makes me so upset because why would someone just go on a rant on Facebook and just kind of degrade this lady, this young lady for who she was?
Again, I mean, understanding where you're coming from as a mom and as a Latina yourself, but again, where do we draw the line? How is this different than what Ms. Hill did on Twitter? She's just expressing herself against the president. This student is just saying, "Hey, I don't want to be going to school with these DACA kids." Right. Is that her right?
I mean, certainly it is. I mean, let's first commend her bravery. I mean, to speak out, knowing, any child that is in the country, any child that is has issues with, say, the DACA program or is in school because of it, you've got to commend their bravery for being able to speak out against it, because there's tremendous risk, and that's that shouldn't be lost in the story. But this is from the student that was picking on her. I mean, this is like bullying. This is everything that we're trying to change in people's behavior.
Right. It's like we're saying bullying is bad unless you're bullying a DACA student.
Right. Exactly.
So it's not
Transylvania
just about
University
freedom.
isn't something that I had heard of.
I hadn't either. I thought it was vampires.
Yeah,
to me,
right,
we need
exactly,
to talk about Transylvania University.
I thought that's where Dracula went to school.
Yeah, exactly. Up against the clock here. So then that begs the question: what are they teaching?
Right.
Your take, Jaclyn, just quickly.
It piggybacks on what we just spoke about. It's these children or students were taught hate for no reason. They were just taught to hate. And this young lady who was incredibly brave, her video took a lot of guts. It just, I think it's horrible.
I think we're talking about the difference, too, between what's legal, what is constitutional, and what is human decency. And I think sometimes we got to put that into the equation, not just the legality, but what is the right thing to do. Thank you all. Nautica de la Cruz, thank you so much for being here. Jaclyn Bogart, thank you so much for being here. Ed Sanders, as always, great to see you.
We honestly